Welcome to the Jenna Ellis Show, sponsored by Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals. Visit legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com. Good evening and welcome to a very special edition of Jenna Ellis Tonight. We are only about an hour away from an historic speech from former President Trump from the RNC convention floor. This will be the first time he has addressed the public since that horrific assassination attempt on his life Saturday in Butler, Pennsylvania. So what will his speech contain? He said that he has rewritten the entire thing because he was so moved from the assassination attempt. So let's go to our political panel for their analysis of whether this will be a unifying speech or what we can possibly expect. So let's bring in our political panel. All right, so for tonight, we have John Jackson, who is a Democrat strategist. We also have Ron Coleman, who is an attorney and host of the Coleman Nation podcast. And we also have Tho Bishop, who is with the Mises Institute. And we also have my dog Copper in the background, who is in studio with me tonight and weighing in on his love for former President Trump. So you're hearing him in the background. This is live. So let's go first to you, Ron. You know, this is an historic evening. I think the nation was very much shaken by the events on Saturday. I mean, I'm not old enough to remember the previous assassination attempt of Ronald Reagan, or where those who remember where they were for John F. Kennedy's assassination. I mean, these are moments that define America as a country, can unify America around a common understanding of our respect for life, of the fact that political violence is never a good option. And I think that President Trump has said that he is going to try to unify the country. Can he do that in his speech tonight?
I think that what he can do is demonstrate to people that he has the capacity to make a non-divisive speech. I don't think that he can truly unify the country. I don't think any man born of woman can unify the country. But can he move people in the middle to feel more comfortable with the idea that this is a man they can vote for, because at a moment of crisis on many fronts, he is not going to be divisive and he's not going to be accusatory.
Yeah, and so I don't know if you watched Tucker Carlson's speech just moments ago from the RNC convention floor. He made a really good point that said, this is a man who media is claiming is the most divisive figure in American history. I think that's a little bit ridiculous of rhetoric, but, this is someone who is so divisive, who's ready to just incite and inflame the passions of the nation. He's not good for democracy. And yet President Trump hasn't done any of those things over the last several days. In fact, if anything, his posts on Truth Social have only been about his campaign. He posted the news about former Fox News commentator Lou Dobbs and his passing today, which our hearts just got to his family. I knew him personally as well. I mean, this has been a hard week, I think, for everybody on a lot of different fronts. But, he really hasn't taken the moment to politicize this as much as he's just taken a moment to sit back at the RNC convention. Do you agree with Tucker on that?
I do. And I mean, it's interesting, the fanning of the flames has come from Biden with his Lester Holt interview and things like that, right? You had a little period there of reaching out. It was not very long lasting. And there was, I think, some campaign calculations there. But I think Tucker's speech was very illustrative of what I am hoping that we'll get from Donald Trump tonight, where there was a very human side to it. There was something larger there than simple political partisan gamesmanship. But there's also an element where when I hear national unity, there's a part of me that gets concerned, because often national unity is a way of kind of moderating politics. And ultimately what has brought people to Donald Trump, the opportunity of this moment, right, is people are looking for a change to the political system that doesn't work for anyone. And so threading that needle behind using this moment to bring the nation unified, while not trying to do sort of crass political unity of the people that are kind of largely ripping us off. I think they've done a very interesting effort with that, with the kind of the theme of the entire convention. I think the selection of J.D. Vance is a demonstration that he hasn't lost his edge, but still can touch on some of these more emotional themes. And so I'm very interested to see what Trump is able to pull out that is a new form of Trump, reintroducing himself to the country without losing the elements that made Trump who he is in the political space today.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. So, John Jackson, let's turn to you because, obviously the Democrats are facing some very divisive, disunifying considerations of their own, and we'll get into that in a moment. But is there something that for you as a Democrat that Donald Trump could say that you would think in this moment would actually cause the nation to come together and at least say, we may not choose to vote for him, but at least we respect him more than what the mainstream media has been suggesting?
Well, I think most Americans, the vast majority of Americans, except a few loud idiots, condemn political violence. I think what was attempted on President Trump was disgusting, and I say that as someone who mobilized the vote against him. That was disgusting. It made me cringe, and I don't wish that upon anybody. But what I think I see a mature GOP strategy, and it started with Glenn Youngkin a few years ago when he won the Virginia governorship. Brian Kemp did it in Georgia. There is a more unifying, compassionate, conservative tone, something that George W. Bush popularized. Just changing the way you speak about the issues, the way can get you more voters than you would expect. And I'm seeing a more disciplined Donald Trump than I have before. Is he going to get a diehard liberal like me? No. But as a Democratic strategist, I'm going to warn Democrats, he is going to get more independent voters as a more disciplined candidate than he was in 2016 and 2020. He has a high chance of getting independent voters in the suburbs that he wouldn't have gotten in 2020.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And, Ron, let's bring you back in here with, this more disciplined message as John is saying. I do think that there has been a change even over the last week with entering the first night of the convention kind of WWE style and just looking, I think, more emotional than I've seen him reveal himself to the public. Generally, he's more of this, hardened fighter. And even though he still is that, he's showing a softer side. I thought it was beautiful with his granddaughter, Kai, speaking last night, just her love of her grandfather. For every woman who's ever had a father and grandfather in her life like that, I think that spoke to a lot of young women as well, just seeing her love for her grandfather and President Trump's smile on his face. So do you think that we may see a little bit of emotion from a little bit changed Donald Trump that maybe he's never let himself show in public before?
I think that that's exactly right. And I think also part of what we're seeing is hearkening back to the Reagan era. They're going to let Trump be Trump. And I think he's decided that no one's going to stop him from being Trump. And part of being Trump is to be the showman, to be the professional entertainer that he was before becoming president, as well as all the other things that he was, and not to defer to all those consultants and all those professionals who want to micromanage who he is. So I think you nailed it. He at this point, it only makes sense for him to say, you think you know who I am. I want to give you the full scope of who I am, and then let you make the decision.
Yeah. So, Tho, what are your thoughts on, maybe that more emotional side of Trump, and can that win over some of these independents as well? Not just necessarily the policy, but the person, because for so long we've been told in the media, whoever is still listening to the failing New York Times and some of these other, I like to call it BS DNC now, and some of this rhetoric saying that, he's the most divisive figure, he's a terrible person, but the nation is going to be watching tonight, I think, even with less criticism initially and more just genuine interest to see what he has to say tonight. It's a huge opportunity. So what would you like him to see from a perspective of maybe winning over some of those independents and moderates you were talking about, with showing maybe the kinder, gentler side, as we've heard in the past with some successful politicians.
Well, as Tucker Carlson outlined, right? I mean, that moment of heroism, that moment of, again, just such a unique moment. Not only the victim aspect of surviving a gunshot, but the courage afterwards. I mean, I know I've talked to people that, around my age, these are fairly non-political people, and it resonated to them. And so I don't know how you can exactly communicate that in a speech when a moment is so illustrative of that. But he also has the advantage here where the American people are hurting in so many different ways on issues. And obviously, there's always been this aspect of bragging about his record. He's had that aspect. We saw it played out in the debate, right, and things like that. And so I'm interested to see the extent to which he's able to capture this emotional aspect, this humanizing aspect, this, again, something that I think has been very strong, very disciplined, very on point throughout this convention. And are we going to see kind of a different approach that interweaves this different sort of style? Again, I'm expecting a lot less of the kind of the cruder aspects that again make some people love Trump but turn off others. Is there going to be a way of attaching this moment of national leadership with the issues in a way that is going to make it acceptable for people that, again, might not have voted the last couple times around? Maybe you did not vote for him in 2020 after voting him in 2016. Is that combination of the substance of addressing the concerns that Americans have that has made it a very favorable environment before the craziness the last 4 weeks or so? And is there going to be a different approach to hitting those issues with this tone?
Yeah, and I think if there's anyone that can read a moment or read the room, that is Donald Trump. So I was just so moved to see his expression. But we're going to take a hard break here. We'll be right back with more of our continuing coverage here on the Salem News Channel. My fellow Americans, we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an absolute disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a consistent issue, and high interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East that have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even amid the tensions. There are so many reasons that Americans just like you and me should consider investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero hassle, education first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com to download their free gold investing guide. I've read it and there is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is not the time to roll the dice with your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals today and tell them that I sent you. And we're back with our power panel ahead of Donald Trump's historic speech at the RNC convention in under an hour, projected, of course, but he loves to make a delayed entrance just to keep us all on our toes. So stay tuned to the Salem News Channel for our continuing coverage and analysis. But let's talk now about the Democrats. And, John Jackson, of course, I'm coming to you on this one. Reports have been suggesting for a while that Joe Biden may drop out of the race, and those have only heated up since he tested positive for COVID this week. It's been an incredible week of news. And so reports are suggesting that even now, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are urging him privately to step down, and he may do that as early as this weekend. Do you think those reports are accurate? And if so, where does that leave the Democrats in terms of the rules of your own convention?
I think that it's pretty accurate. I think it's going to be pretty hard for President Biden to go forward without the support of the leaders in Congress. You can't. You simply can't. And I think the natural succession is going to be Vice President Kamala Harris, and ultimately she'll select a running mate, and he'll endorse Kamala Harris more than likely, and she'll be voted in the nominee at the convention if President Biden is to drop out. But I think that it's pretty powerful that establishment Democrats like Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi and all these Democrats from swing districts, battleground districts, are saying he needs to drop out. I think that his path to victory is pretty slim right now. He doesn't, and his problem is more so not so much with independents as it is Democrats themselves. He can't mobilize the Democratic base right now. The Democratic base does not want to turn out for Joe Biden. So there needs to be somebody who can take on a full campaign schedule. Right now, President Biden can't even handle a full campaign schedule. He was making the excuse that the debate was after 8 p.m. You got to debate. You got to run the country past 8 p.m. too. So I think that those calling on him to step aside are on the right side of history here if you really want to win this election.
Well, and John, sticking with you for just a moment, there have been some reports that are suggesting that Biden may not endorse anyone if, in fact, he does step down, but would call for an open convention. Do you think that that would cause more disarray for the Democrats than Joe Biden basically picking a successor, whether that is the current vice president or even someone else? Would it be better, in your opinion, for Biden to basically give his nod to say coalesce around X person rather than calling for an open convention? Or is it more fair because the Democrats really didn't have a primary?
I think that could work, but I think it's going to have the same result. I think Vice President Kamala Harris ends up the nominee either way. And I think one of the biggest reasons is the funds. All the money that President Biden has raised, you can easily transfer that over to Kamala, or you can give it to the party. But for a brand new candidate to start a brand new campaign or committee, that's tough. That's tough. I think that just the whole logistics is a lot easier for the Democratic Party if Vice President Kamala Harris becomes the nominee. So either situation, I see where he drops out, I see Kamala eventually becoming the nominee.
Well, Ron, what do you think? Because, some, even a couple of the Democrats that I've had on this show have suggested that maybe even if Biden does step down, we can stick with a Biden-Harris ticket with just a Jill Biden at the top of the ticket with a Vice President Kamala Harris, and then the money can stay the same. And even, the printouts can stay the same heading into November. That's just 4 months away. So is that a possibility, or where do you think or see that the Democrats are possibly headed?
No. That's silly, Jenny, that's silly. It's imaginative.
No offense to John Jackson on this panel, but a lot of them are. I wouldn't put it past him.
I wouldn't put it past him, but I think I mean, Democrats looking at that possibility, I think, would be crazy not to try to draft Michelle Obama, who is probably one person who could raise the money fast that John is concerned about losing, and who could really save the day. Jill Biden is not popular. I don't know if she's more unpopular than Kamala Harris, but on the other hand, I don't think either one of them is qualified to be president, but there's something that really smacks of third world, family, Evita Peron type vibe that I think would really turn people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't put it past her if really what some of the reports are suggesting is that Jill Biden is the one wanting to hold on to power. Then it may be that the way to get Joe Biden to step down is to say, hey, Jill, we're going to prop you up as the nominee, so at least it can stay within the family. But so, do you think that we're going to see this actually happen this weekend, or are the Democrats just going to kind of try to draw this out and the long game and just wait till after the convention and, hey, Joe Biden's the nominee and, this is a weekend at Bernie's sort of situation, as Governor DeSantis alluded to in his RNC speech?
I think the Democrats would love for it. I think the Democrats would love for it to be resolved this weekend. I don't think it's going to be resolved this weekend, though. because the Democrats have a Joe Biden problem. Joe Biden doesn't want to give up power. The people around Joe Biden don't want him to give up power. There's a report by Robert Costa that just came up saying that they're furious at these reports coming up, that everything is a lie. The Halpern report earlier about this entire process playing out is completely fabricated. And I believe it because in spite of all the propaganda about good old Uncle Joe, he's just a nice guy, he's always been a bitter, narcissistic, self-aggrandizing old man his entire career. He's always wanted this position. He has this position. They're going to have to pry it from his cold, dead hands. I don't think he's going anywhere. He's going to use COVID to buy himself a week. And then all of a sudden you're dealing with a time crunch because from his calculation is going to be, look, show me anyone that's polling better than him right now. You have some marginal differences in some battlegrounds. You pull out someone like Mark Kelly, right? Like who has no campaign operations, has never done something national, right? So you have these fantastical polls out there for anyone that even shows a significant difference. And so I don't think he's going to go anywhere. I think they're going to fight this to the bitter end. They're going to run out the clock. He's got the delegates. He's got the power. And I think the people around him, they know that if Biden is not the guy, if he is not the president, every single person in that close inner circle has no job. And so I don't think he's going to go anywhere.
Well, so in just the last minute we have with you, what about the donors, though, who are concerned about all the down ticket races and are saying, hey, we are not going to support Joe Biden, at least according to reports? I mean, isn't that at least a little bit of a concern?
I think it's concerned, but his argument's going to be, well, they can huff and they can puff now when I'm the nominee, when I've got the power, when there's nothing that can change this process, and they're going to come back and they're going to flood my coffers because they are afraid of Donald Trump. And I think it's delusional. I think he's wrong, but I think Joe Biden is delusional and wrong. So again, I don't think this is a smart way, but Joe Biden does not care about the country. He does not care about the Democratic Party more than he cares about Joe Biden. And I don't think he has anyone around him that is looking out for anything more than their own self-interest, and more power to him. I love the people that he has around him, but I think that is the situation we have going on right now. And so I think it's going to require something much more.
Well, we're going to take a hard break here with our power panel, but we'll have much more analysis and ahead of the RNC convention. We come right back here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Well, friends, you might have heard that Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of their box stores or shopping channels the way that they used to. They've been part of this cancel culture, so they want to pass along the savings directly to you by having a $25 extravaganza. I love that word, extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just a one-product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products, some you may not even know about. To get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out their $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows are just $25. MyPillow sandals, also awesome, only $25. Their 6-pack towel sets are $25. And brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, just $25. For the first time ever, the premium MyPillows with the all-new Giza fabric, just $25. And orders over $75 will receive free shipping, too. This amazing offer won't last long. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna, or call 800-564-8475 today. That's 800-564-8475, or go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Jenna. Welcome back to Jenna Ellis Tonight, and for Salem News Channel's continuing coverage of the RNC convention. Make sure you stay tuned after the program for Donald Trump's really big night and his speech on that stage. But last night, with our power panel that is back, we heard from Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance. And, he is a really interesting pick. And I think it's actually a really smart pick. He is a young millennial. He is a non-politician. Really, and this is the first time, I think, in a long time that you have two not career politicians that are on that same ticket. And with his life story, the way that he communicated from that stage, he clearly understands President Trump's mantra. He's focused on the economy. He's focused on jobs. He said, this country is for the American worker. And I think that really resonated with people. I mean, what I'm hearing from a lot of even my close personal friends today is, wow, J.D. Vance really spoke in a way that I haven't heard a politician speak to me since Donald Trump, which is possibly the highest praise you can get from Trump fans. So let's start with you. What do you think of J.D. Vance as a vice presidential selection?
I think it's fascinating. It's an investment in the presidency, I think, more than the campaign. I think J.D. Vance will help in some of those Rust Belt states. But what they have with Vance is someone who's going to be an asset to governing. Now, there's aspects of Vance's ideology that have kind of unique concerns. I'm not a big fan of the Oren Cass American Compass sort of folks there. But it's not just a new generation in terms of a younger candidate, but also I think a new generation when it comes to Republican ideology, conservative ideology. So I'm excited to see what that looks like in a vice president.
Yeah. So, Ron, what do you think of J.D. Vance? I mean, he is very new, and a lot of people are suggesting, well, hey, if Kamala Harris isn't qualified to be president, I mean, look at her track record for all of her positions. She was in the Senate for a lot longer than J.D. Vance. She was, an attorney in California. She's been in government office and now the vice presidency for 4 years. So, does that set up J.D. Vance at a vice presidential debate for those potential types of attacks?
Yes, she's got a record of getting government jobs and taking a salary and benefits from the government. She certainly doesn't have a record of anything that could really be recognized as public service or achievement. It's not, experience, he's as experienced as Barack Obama was at this stage in his career. And he's immensely, you don't need a lot of qualification to be vice president of the United States. He'll do just fine.
All right. And John Jackson, what do you think? Does this strike more fear in the hearts of Democrats, or was there a pick that you would have been more concerned about?
Look, I am an 84 baby. I am a Marine Corps vet. I served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. 84. Me and this guy have a lot in common. I also work in finance, as he did for a little bit. But it does not expand the Trump coalition. That would have been Marco Rubio, Tim Scott, Byron Donald. So he clearly doesn't care about expanding the coalition as much as having a vice president he can really trust that can get his agenda done, help him get his agenda done. So that is the pick that this is. He's clearly confident that he has the coalition to win, because I don't see him really expanding the coalition by that much.
That's an interesting analysis. And, I think, Tho, to your point, there is some consideration that Vance will be able to speak to, some of these Rust Belt states and some of the workers and the union workers that may have historically voted Democrat. But, the conventional wisdom said someone like a Tim Scott, a Byron Donalds, or even a Marco Rubio, there's more in the minority. But J.D. Vance and his story and his background is really moving. So it is a really fascinating pick. We're going to have to leave it there for this segment. But I want to come back to the power panel later on in the show to ask a little bit more about J.D. Vance and also preview the RNC convention and the historic speech that we are gearing up for from President Trump. I'm really excited to hear from him tonight. So we'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. And make sure you stay on the Salem News Channel to hear President Trump's speech in the 10 p.m. hour. My fellow Americans, we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an absolute disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a consistent issue, and high interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East that have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even amid the tensions. There are so many reasons that Americans just like you and me should consider investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero hassle, education first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com to download their free gold investing guide. I've read it and there is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is not the time to roll the dice with your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals today and tell them that I sent you. And we're back with our power panel. John Jackson is a Democrat strategist Ron Coleman, who is an attorney and host of the Coleman Nation podcast. And we also have Tho Bishop with the Mises Institute. So let's talk about those policies and the base that Donald Trump may not think that he needs to expand anymore, even though the Republican Party clearly with their newly passed platform has tried to expand the base, much to the chagrin of some evangelicals. So, do you think that really shows some potential issues in terms of the platform, or kind of this big tent, or are Republicans and the GOP just kind of going to ride that wave? And we think that the coalition is definitely enough for November.
Look, I think that the selection of J.D. Vance should go a long way in easing any concerns there, right? This was an attempt to moderate. This was not reach across the party itself and bring in a moderate, someone who would have been hated by the Trump base, but we might get some new donors in, a Nikki Haley type, right? J.D. Vance was doubling down, I think, on a serious, on the ideological issues, on the platform sort of issues that had made people interested in Trump in the first place. And I think one area that's very interesting of expanding the platform, and it's kind of nerdy, it doesn't get a lot of talk about, but it's the Bitcoin issue, which is, I think, ties into the reason why Silicon Valley types are attracting to Trump, right? Peter Thiel was kind of a lone outcast there. Now you have Elon Musk. Now you have a very interesting group of financial supporters, people that are probably not traditional Republican voters at all. It matters not only because it is bringing in new money, reaching out to a different type of demographic, but it can also really help on some of the inflationary issues, some of the substance issues as well, in a meaningful way. And so I think that there's, you add J.D. Vance, you add just the more serious nature of the entire Trump infrastructure. I understand the concerns. I get it. These are very important issues. But I think there's actually a far more reason for optimism for a more serious Trump administration the second time around than the first time. And that should give, if you care about the end goals, if you care about some of the policy outcomes, I think that's the real reason for optimism.
Yeah, so John, what do you think about, some of these policy differences? I mean, we've been talking so much about the candidates themselves and the difference, between Donald Trump and Joe Biden and who's at the top of the ticket, who's going to be VP, all of that. Are some of the issues that are really important to the American people kind of getting lost in the conversation in a way that you think that the Democrats can maybe bring to the floor at their convention in a few weeks?
Yeah, I think the Democrats have to know how to switch gears. Obviously, when it comes to just getting grassroots donations and getting volunteers, the abortion issue is something that gets a lot of liberal people fired up. But as far as just reaching the working class Democratic base, there has to be a strong economic message, and you have to toe the fine line of bragging about Joe Biden's economic accomplishments while also understanding that while the economic indicators may be good, a lot of Americans just simply aren't feeling this supposed good economy. So you have to be looking forward and talking about what the Democrats are going to do to improve the status of your average American who's living paycheck to paycheck. So it has to be really a strong economic kitchen table type message at the convention, and really stray away from the polarizing issues, because that's not what Americans are talking about as much.
Yeah, so Ron, we heard from Donald Trump Jr. last night where he said, under Joe Biden, you promised build back better, nothing is built, nothing is back, nothing is better. That has been a mantra of the Trump camp that they have certainly reinforced. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And yet the Democrats have seemed to go to those polarizing issues, like running on abortion and what they would call as abortion extremism from the Republicans, which I would simply say is pro-life and is the truth. And the platform has always reflected the truth. But a lot of people of faith, and particularly evangelical Christians, have been really discouraged, frankly, that the GOP excised the traditional definition of marriage and watered down pro-life in their platform. We haven't really heard anything about the social issues from the RNC convention, which was probably wise. They are focusing more on things like the economy, things like wages, those at the border, a lot of these things that all conservatives agree on. So where do you think this goes in terms of policy after the convention and messaging, at least to the coalition of faith-based groups that I think Trump still does need?
I think I agree with you. I mean, he needs it in the sense that he needs to convince them that he's the last and best choice for them, and that they need to vote and not sit on their hands. Frankly, after the overturning of Roe versus Wade, which came about as a result of judicial appointments by President Trump, there isn't really a very strong argument for sitting on your hands if you're a pro-life voter. You have to recognize that coalition politics isn't only a Democratic thing. It's also a Republican thing. And where is it going to go? I think it's going to be a not particularly major part of the messaging. The messaging is going to hammer on the less divisive issues, the ones that are the strongest for the Republicans.
Yeah, so Tho, how much policy do you think we will hear from President Trump tonight? Because his remarks could go as long as a rally speech. There's nothing that says that he can't just command that stage for 2.5 hours. We've seen him go certainly longer in previous speeches. Do you think that with the start time of 10 p.m. or a little bit after, he's going to keep a little more brief remarks? I don't know that Donald Trump has ever been really brief in his life, but do you think that he's going to get into some of those things, or is it going to focus so much more on the unity message that he makes that the emphasis and doesn't really address some of these other issues?
Yeah, I don't expect him to get too in the weeds when it comes to policy. I expect him to project competency versus disorder, competency versus chaos. I assume that you'll probably get some points on talking about peace and some of those foreign policy aspects that he hammered hard during the debate. I don't expect to get Biden's name mentioned. I think there's going to be a softening in the way that contrast is portrayed. But I think it's going to be in projecting himself as a competent leader in the face of what Americans are feeling as the pain. Again, as illustrated by the handling of the Secret Service, right? Just this genuine sense that America is dysfunctional, chaotic, and not capable of doing basic things. I think it's going to be a projection of confidence more than specific policy points.
Yeah, and I think you're probably right about that, now that he said that he's basically rewritten his entire message and has a different focus on unity more than, just some of his traditional kind of rally speeches. We probably will see more of that 30,000-foot view. But speaking, just in the last few minutes we have in this segment about that assassination attempt, I mean, it's been really fascinating to see what details we still don't have, what answers we don't have. And, Ron Coleman, to me, I was thinking, okay, if I'm trying to get to the bottom of whether there was intent versus gross negligence on the part of the United States Secret Service, because clearly there was a failure there, I would really want to know, if I'm Congress, about all of the previous outdoor rallies of, maybe say the last 5 or 10, and were there the same type of failures that just somehow by the grace of God, there was no attempt on the president's life at those rallies, but that shot could have been taken? Or was there something specific and unique to Butler, Pennsylvania, where a sniper just happened to show up? So, what do you think from, a lawyer's perspective, if you're trying to kind of piece this together like a crime scene, what type of things would you want to know?
Well, these are good analytical questions. I think they're second level. I think the first level questions are the culture of non-accountability. And it is the definition of the federal government in general. But in general, everyone understands that no one in the federal government is ever fired. Certainly no Democrats. There is never any adverse consequence for a failure to do one's job. And that also has the capability to be a powerful political message for Donald Trump to focus on that, and for Republicans in general.
Yeah, and certainly no women are usually fired as well. And we saw Donald Trump come in with a very different security detail to the RNC convention floor, which is inside, than he had in Butler, Pennsylvania. But as Speaker Mike Johnson promised to not only the Republicans, but the American people, that Congress will get to the bottom of this, I hope that they will start those hearings as early as next week, as soon as they are back into session. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight and our continuing coverage of the RNC convention. Well, photos and reports are surfacing that Melania Trump is in the house at the RNC convention for her husband's speech tonight. She posted a beautiful statement after that horrific assassination attempt on her husband's life on Saturday. So she will be present for his speech. So let's bring in Bob Sander Plaats, who is the president and CEO of the Family Leader out of Iowa. And, this speech, Bob, is supposed to be about unity, a path forward. You know President Trump personally. What should we expect, and where do evangelical Christians go from here?
Well, first of all, I think you're going to see a changed man tonight. I really do believe that. Jenny, you'll probably find this somewhat surprising, but after I did a hit on CNN, I got a text through President Trump saying what a great job I did, and really glad to be working with me at this point and being on his side. I think what happened on Saturday, that bullet grazing his ear, you don't leave that unchanged. And I think he also knows this is now his election to lose. And so I think he needs to cast a vision for unity tonight, bring Americans together. This should not be just a Republican red meat speech, but this should be everything that we've always wanted in the red, white, and blue America speech. So I think you're going to see a unifying speech tonight, hopefully from President Trump. I think you're going to see a very different demeanor. I think a demeanor that's going to surprise a lot of people. A little bit like the first that we just saw the debate in June with President Biden. Jen, I told a lot of people that would have been his first debate in 2020. He would have won the presidency, and there would have been no room for cheating whatsoever.
Yeah, I think you're right that we have seen a more disciplined Donald Trump, as one of my panelists said earlier in the show, which is a little bit surprising that maybe it took him about 8 years, but he's finally there. But this type of life trauma and living through that moment, I think absolutely has to change a person, even someone like Donald Trump. And so do you expect him to be a little bit more emotional and show kind of a side to the American people that he really doesn't like to show as much in public? And I personally would love to see that. And when I was working for him, I kept telling him, show the side that I know and love, which is the humorous side, the engaging, the human side.
I think you're definitely going to see that. I think you've been seeing that all the way through the convention. You're just seeing a completely different demeanor of a Donald Trump today. One where I think he's taken it in. I think his remarks by his granddaughter last night really touched him and moved him. So I think you're going to see him take this in. But I do think you don't leave an experience like he had on Saturday. And praise God that bullet didn't land where the shooter intended it to land. But who knows? This may be the wake-up call, not only for a Donald Trump in his presidency and leadership, but for America as well. That it's time for us to come together.
Yeah, amen to that. And, he does have this big opportunity, and I'm glad to hear that he reached out to you, because I know that there were, some differences in a primary, like there always are, and that's okay, because that's what our constitutional republic means. And so for, those who are concerned about the GOP platform, we haven't heard anything about pro-life traditional values. It's focused a lot more on policy, the border, the economy, those sorts of things. What would you like to see from Donald Trump tonight that for you as a leader of a coalition that stands for biblical values, what would you like to see from President Trump tonight?
I think it's very basic, Jenna. He's the president that appointed 3 Supreme Court justices that led to the overturn of Roe v. Wade. And now he will be a champion for the culture of the sanctity of human life when he's president. Although J.D. Vance didn't really mention it in his remarks last night, J.D. Vance has a very solid pro-life history. And so I'm hoping that J.D. Vance will have great insight and influence on him as well. But it's one of those things, if you're going to overturn Roe v. Wade or appoint the justices to overturn Roe v. Wade, you have to own it. So I would encourage him, own it, and let people know that you'll be a champion for a culture of the sanctity of human life. And let the other side be the culture of death. That's Iran, that's North Korea. That is not who America is. Be the champion for a culture of life.
Yeah, I was very encouraged to hear and see Speaker Mike Johnson stand up very clearly for that. That was one of the best speeches, I thought. And just in just the last 30 seconds we have with you, Bob Sander Plaats as well, how important is it for Melania Trump to be there for her husband tonight? And what does that signal about the closeness of his family?
Well, I think it's very important for Melania to be there tonight, and there's no doubt she supports him, and she's going to cheer him on. But as you well know, Jenna, their family's been through a lot as well. So I think she's really intentional about keeping out of the spotlight, so to speak. It's going to be hard if you're going to be the next first lady and you're the former first lady. But her being there tonight showing that she supports her husband, that's a big deal.
It's great. Well, thanks so much for coming by. And I know we had some audio troubles originally, but that's all the time that we have for Jenna Ellis tonight. Stay tuned to the Salem News Channel for President Trump's speech coming up next.